The cold steel of the chains burned against Seraphina's shimmering skin. She thrashed, her iridescent tail slamming against the glass walls of the containment tank, but the humans only laughed. A real mermaid, one marveled. Do you know how much she's worth? Pain surged as they siphoned magic from her, the water darkening around her. But deep within, something stirred. A low hum vibrated in her throat, then a scream erupted, shattering glass, warping reality itself. As her captors clutched their bleeding ears, Seraphina whispered through clenched teeth, "They thought I was weak. They will soon learn the truth." If you're new here, welcome. Make sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss an epic story like this one. And if you've already subscribed, thank you so much for your support. Now grab your crew, share this with your gang, and let's get ready for an unforgettable ride. Settle in, relax, and listen until the end. Let's go. Seraphina lived in a world untouched by the hands of greed, a realm as old as the oceans themselves. Beneath the endless stretch of the blue horizon lay the kingdom of Araneth, a breathtaking underwater paradise. The coral gardens stretched like vibrant cities, their colors pulsing in sync with the slow, rhythmic sway of the tides. Massive, glittering crystal caves dotted the seafloor, where the light from bioluminescent creatures painted every surface with hues of emerald and sapphire. The ocean, rich with life and mystery, was Seraphina's home, a tranquil, harmonious place where the creatures of the deep lived in balance, unburdened by the struggles of the surface world. Seraphina, with her long, flowing hair like strands of silver moonlight, and her scales that shimmered like stardust, was the embodiment of the ocean's grace. Her voice was soft, a lilting melody that could calm the storms or summon the waves to rise. But her beauty was not the only thing that set her apart. It was her heart, one that was gentle, curious, and ever so protective of her people. She was known among her kin as the guardian of the tides, a title earned for her unwavering devotion to the safety and well-being of her underwater realm. Though Seraphina had always been fascinated by the world above the waves, she had learned to be cautious. The surface dwellers, with their ships, weapons, and strange ambitions, were creatures of danger and chaos. She had heard tales from the ancient sea turtles and wise old oracles, whispers of greed-driven men who sought the treasures of the sea, who took what did not belong to them, and who would stop at nothing to get it. But Seraphina's heart remained open, never fully tainted by the harshness of their stories. She would watch from afar, curious about the human world, but always remaining out of reach, watching them from the safe embrace of the ocean's depths. She never could have anticipated that the day would come when those very humans would turn their eyes upon her and the world she held so dear. It was an ordinary day, or so it seemed, when the change came. A ship appeared on the horizon, its massive sail billowing against the wind. Its creaking frame and the sounds of men shouting commands echoed across the water. Seraphina had seen ships before. Most would sail past, not noticing the wonders beneath the surface. But this one was different. This one anchored near a cluster of coral reefs that were among her favorite spots, places where dolphins played and sea turtles nested. It wasn't long before the humans began diving into the waters, bringing strange devices with them. Among them was a man whose presence radiated greed and ambition. He was tall, with dark eyes that seemed to burn with an insatiable hunger for knowledge and power. He was a scientist, a biologist with a reputation for exploring the depths in search of creatures that had never been seen by human eyes. He had heard of Seraphina, or at least of the legends of mermaids, and his mind was fixated on her kind. They had heard the songs of the mermaids before, and the stories of their powers, but Seraphina had always been elusive, never fully revealing herself to the humans. She had remained a myth, a mystery that humans could only dream of capturing. But now they had come, not with the intention of respecting her or learning from her, but with a thirst to control her, to harness the magic that flowed through her veins. The scientist, with the help of his crew, a ruthless pirate with a scarred face and a heart colder than the depths themselves, set his sights on Seraphina. They had prepared a net of strange materials, designed to ensnare and subdue. They had brought a trap that would lock her in place, holding her long enough to study her powers, perhaps even enslave her, using her magic for their own gain. And then there was him, Leander, a young man who was part of the crew but had once been a friend to Seraphina. He was one of the few humans she had trusted, a sailor who had ventured into the sea once before and who had seemed kind enough. But his heart too had been overtaken by ambition. His loyalty had shifted when promises of wealth and power had been dangled in front of him, and he had chosen to betray her. Leander had come to her once, telling her of his dreams of adventure, of riches beyond the sea, of things the ocean could never provide. He had told her that he would never harm her, that he would always protect her, but now his actions spoke a different truth. It was he who had led her into the trap, deceiving her with words of friendship, only to deliver her into the hands of those who sought to break her. The betrayal stung deeper than any blade, for Seraphina had believed in him. She had trusted him with a piece of her heart, and now she was chained, locked in a cage of metal and glass. The sting of the chains on her skin, the cold metal that pressed against her, was nothing compared to the searing pain of betrayal. But there, in the darkness of her prison, something stirred within her, a raw, untamed force that had long been buried beneath the surface. The ocean's magic, once dormant, began to rise, and with it came her fury. Her body trembled as the sea around her responded, the water vibrating with energy. She could feel the storm building, the currents surging, the winds howling in a symphony of rage. Seraphina was no mere creature of the sea. She was its guardian, its protector, and its wrath. And now, as the humans reveled in their supposed victory, they would learn the truth of her power. With a force that shattered the glass of her cage and sent a wave crashing through the ship, Seraphina broke free. The humans screamed in terror as the storm erupted around them, as if the very ocean had come alive with her fury. The sea rose in towering waves, dragging their ships beneath the surface, swallowing their tools and their arrogance. The scientist and the pirate tried to flee, but the ocean did not spare them. As Seraphina swam through the wreckage, her heart broke as she saw what they had done to her home. The once pristine waters were now tainted, the coral reefs damaged by their greed. Marine life had been slaughtered, and artifacts, ancient treasures that held the wisdom of the sea, had been stolen. Her anger burned hotter than the fire that fueled their ambition. But something else burned within her now, an understanding, a clarity. If humans brought destruction to her world, then she would show them the true power of the sea. They will pay, she vowed, and the ocean will have its reckoning. Seraphina drifted through the open water, the storm she had summoned still crashing around her in the aftermath of her escape. Her heart was a tempest, torn between the yearning to protect what she had lost and the newfound fury that now surged through her veins. The ocean had given her power, but it was a power that had always been reserved for the ancients, the power of the sea itself, forbidden and wild. For the first time in her life, Seraphina felt the weight of the ocean's secrets pressing against her, urging her to dive deeper, to awaken the dormant forces that had once kept the balance. She could feel the ancient energies vibrating beneath her, as if the very sea itself was calling to her, coaxing her to embrace its darkest and most forbidden magics. The ocean had no mercy for those who exploited it, and now neither did Seraphina. In her loneliness, she sought out the source of the ocean's ancient magic, a place lost to time, hidden deep within the darkest trench of Araneth. The abyssal sanctum was a place few dared venture, a home to creatures of legend and horrors whispered about by sailors. But Seraphina knew it was here that she could harness the power she needed for her revenge. There, amidst the shadowy reefs, she encountered Vespera, the sea witch. Vespera was an ancient being, as old as the first tides, with eyes like burning coals and a presence that rippled with malice. Her power was unmatched, and her heart had long been hardened by the betrayals of humans who sought her out, only to exploit her for their own gain. "You seek vengeance," Vespera said in a voice like a distant thunderclap, her fingers tracing the currents as if they were threads of fate. "I sense the rage in you, but be warned, once you walk this path, there is no returning." Seraphina did not hesitate. The decision had already been made. "Teach me," she demanded. her voice cold with the certainty of the storm that raged inside her. Vesper's lips curled into a sly smile. "Very well, you will have the power, but at what cost?" Under the witch's guidance, Seraphina began to learn the forbidden arts. She summoned waves that crashed like thunder against cliffs, commanding the water to bend and twist to her will. She delved into forgotten rituals, binding her essence to the forces that lay beneath the waves, currents, tides, and the ancient creatures of the deep. The sea was no longer just her home, it was her weapon. As her magic grew, so did her understanding of the ocean's dark side. She no longer feared the power that flowed through her. She welcomed it, embraced it, until it became part of her very soul. Seraphina's heart hardened as the sea took hold, reshaping her from a gentle guardian into a vengeful force. Her body pulsed with newfound strength, and the currents seemed to part for her, bending to her every command. In her pursuit of power, Seraphina knew she needed more than just magic. She needed allies, others who could help her take her revenge against the humans who had dared to harm her world. Her first ally was Kalin, a rogue merman warrior who had once fought alongside the humans in a misguided attempt to protect his people. Betrayed by their broken promises, he had turned his back on both the humans and his own kind. His heart was as hardened as the reefs, and his blade had tasted blood on more than one occasion. He sought justice, and Seraphina knew that his fury would be a powerful weapon. "I've seen what they're capable of," Kalin growled, his voice low and cold, "and I've seen enough to know that they will never stop until the oceans run dry." Together, they ventured deeper into the ocean, to the forgotten abyss, where ancient beasts of unimaginable size slumbered in the blackness. Here, Seraphina called upon the last of the sea's greatest protectors, the Kraken, a creature of legend that could pull ships beneath the waves with a single strike of its massive tentacles. It was a beast born of the very wrath of the ocean, and it was awakened by the fury that surged through Seraphina's veins. The Kraken answered her call, rising from the depths with an earth-shaking roar that shook the very ocean floor. Its eyes, like glowing lanterns, fixed upon Seraphina, acknowledging her as its mistress. The sea beast's power was now at her command, ready to unleash destruction on anyone who dared challenge the ocean's might. With her newfound strength and her loyal allies, Vespera, Kalin, and the Kraken, Seraphina set her sights on the humans. Her first strike was swift, her vengeance precise. The pirate ships that had once sailed the seas with impunity now found themselves at the mercy of Seraphina's wrath. She raised her hand, and the sky darkened. The winds howled, and the waves grew tall, surging violently beneath the boats. With a mere thought, she summoned a storm that ripped the ships apart. Sailors screamed as the water swallowed them whole, dragging them down into the depths where they belonged. Those who survived the storm spoke of an impossible creature, a vengeful mermaid with eyes that glowed like storm clouds, a voice that could shatter minds, and an army of sea monsters at her command. The humans who had once exploited the ocean now feared its power. The story spread quickly, a warning carried by the few who survived. Yet Seraphina knew that this was only the beginning. There would be no mercy. "Return what you have taken," she sent through the waves, her voice like the rumble of thunder, "or drown in your own greed." But the humans, relentless and stubborn, refused. They sent their greatest hunters, men who believed they could slay the mermaid and claim her power for themselves. They believed they could trap her, just as they had once done. But they had underestimated the sea, and they had underestimated Seraphina. As they plotted their next move, unaware of the storm that awaited them, Seraphina's transformation was complete. She was no longer the curious, gentle mermaid who once sought to protect her kingdom. She was the storm, the fury of the sea incarnate, and there would be no escape for those who had wronged her. The sea was no longer a haven for Seraphina. It had become a battleground. The humans, relentless in their pursuit of her destruction, had prepared for her retaliation, and they had brought with them weapons that would test the very core of her being. No longer relying on their crude ships alone, they had employed sorcery, blending their technology with magic, to create devices capable of neutralizing the ocean's power. The ambush was set, a trap designed to lure Seraphina and her allies into a deadly confrontation. They had learned of the Kraken's power and had prepared a net of enchanted chains strong enough to bind even the mightiest of sea beasts. But they had underestimated Seraphina's wrath and the strength of her allies. The day the humans launched their attack, the skies were filled with ominous clouds, their edges crackling with magical energy. The sea churned, sensing the storm of violence about to unfold. Ships, each adorned with runes designed to block Seraphina's magic, approached with cannons primed and weapons drawn, but they were no match for the rage that pulsed within her. Seraphina stood at the heart of the abyssal waves, her body crackling with energy as she raised her arms. The winds howled and the waters swelled to monstrous heights. As the first ship drew near, the sea itself rose up, tearing through the hulls like paper. The waters surged with a force that could not be reckoned with, as if the ocean itself had come alive in fury. "Let them feel the wrath of the deep," she whispered through gritted teeth. The rogue merman warrior, Kalin, was the first to strike. With his trident drawn, he swam into the chaos, his every movement a blur of lethal precision. The humans had armed themselves with strange weapons, mechanical harpoons and enchanted bolts, but they were no match for the speed and strength of Kalin. He tore through their ranks with ease, his blade flashing as it cut down soldiers who had thought themselves invincible. On the other side of the battlefield, the Kraken, now fully under Seraphina's command, rose from the depths with a roar that shook the very ocean. Its massive tentacles whipped through the water, crushing the ships beneath its weight. The humans' technology, designed to bind the power of the sea, faltered in the face of a creature born from it. The sea dragon's serpentine form coiled through the wreckage, snapping at the hulls and tossing them aside like toys. The screams of the survivors echoed in the storm, but there was no escape. The sea itself had become an instrument of vengeance, and Seraphina was its master. But amidst the chaos, amidst the shattering of wood and the cries of the dying, Seraphina's eyes locked onto a figure, one she had never thought to see again. He stood upon a ship at the edge of the battlefield, a man who had once been her friend, a man who had once sworn loyalty to her. Leander. He was no longer the man she had trusted. The look in his eyes, filled with cold determination and the fear of a cornered animal, told her all she needed to know. He had been part of this war, leading the charge against her kingdom, against her people. He had betrayed her, and now he was prepared to kill her. She swam toward him, her heart pounding with rage and confusion. The sea seemed to grow still around her, as if holding its breath, waiting for the inevitable confrontation. Leander saw her approach, his hand moving to the blade at his side, but unlike the others who had succumbed to fear, he did not hesitate. "Seraphina," he called, his voice strained with something that might have been regret, or perhaps it was just the remnants of a past he could no longer escape. "You don't understand. We're doing this for the greater good, for progress, for humanity." Seraphina's eyes burned with fury. Progress? She had trusted him, believed in him, and now he stood before her as an enemy. "You betrayed me," she snarled, her voice a guttural growl. "You sold me out. You gave me to them." Leander's gaze faltered for just a moment. "It wasn't like that," he pleaded, his voice cracking. "I had no choice. The words were lost as Seraphina unleashed her power. The sea roared in response to her anguish. Water swirled in violent torrents around them, crashing against the ship, threatening to pull them both under. With a swift motion, Seraphina summoned a bolt of lightning from the storm, striking the deck of the ship. The blast sent Leander tumbling to the ground, but he quickly regained his footing, drawing his weapon. The ocean trembled around them as he advanced. The battle between them was not just one of physical strength, but of magic against cunning, of trust against betrayal. Leander's sword was sharp, but Seraphina's control over the sea was unparalleled. She summoned waves to crash against him, but he deflected them with shields of magic, his eyes wild with the desperation of a man who had already crossed a point of no return. Seraphina's fury burned brighter with every passing moment, the desire to destroy him consuming her, until her voice became a screech of power that shattered the air. The sea itself seemed to cry out in grief, echoing her pain. "You abandoned everything we could have had," she cried, her voice trembling with emotion. "You betrayed your own heart, Leander." For a moment, the two of them were locked in a standoff, their magic crackling between them like a deadly storm. But something in Seraphina stirred, an old memory of the kindness he once showed her, the trust they had shared. It was fleeting, but it was enough to pause her hand, to hold her back from destroying him completely. Leander stood, breathing heavily, his face torn between remorse and defiance. "I never wanted this. I never wanted to hurt you." Seraphina's heart ached, but the rage inside her was still there, churning, threatening to overtake her. But something deeper, the essence of the sea itself, spoke to her. It was the lesson she had learned during her journey, to control the storm within her, and not let it consume her entirely. With a final, painful decision, Seraphina lowered her hand. She did not strike him down. Instead, she spoke, her voice a quiet whisper amidst the chaos of the battlefield. "Leave," she said, her words final. "Leave and never return, or the sea will drown you." Leander hesitated, his sword lowered. For a moment, Seraphina saw the man he had once been, the man who had cared for her before the greed and ambition had taken over. Then, with one last look at her, one last heartbreaking glance, he turned and fled, disappearing into the storm that still raged around them. Seraphina stood amidst the ruins of the battle, her heart heavy with the weight of her decision. She had almost lost herself to the rage, but in the end she had chosen mercy, mercy that would shape her future. The sea had claimed its due, but it had not consumed her entirely. The storm began to subside, the battle was over, and the humans who had dared to challenge the ocean had been taught a lesson they would never forget. The battle had been won, but the aftermath of Seraphina's vengeance was not one of triumph. The ocean had swallowed the ships, crushed their crews, and scattered the remnants of human ambition into the depths. The storm that Seraphina had summoned had dissipated, but its effects lingered, as if the ocean itself was still mourning the lives lost in the wake of its fury. The human kingdom, or what remained of it, was left in ruins. The once great fleets, the towering spires of cities built on the coasts, and the bustling trade routes were all now nothing but memories, sunk beneath the waves or shattered by the power of the sea. The survivors, those who had managed to flee or hide, were left to pick through the wreckage. What was once a thriving civilization had been reduced to dust and debris, scattered across the vast ocean floor. Seraphina did not revel in the destruction. The weight of it pressed down on her, heavier than the crushing depths of the ocean. She had sought justice, but in the end, she had become a force of nature that had obliterated everything in its path. Was this the vengeance she had wanted? Was this the price of protecting her kingdom, her people, her ocean? The survivors, those few who had managed to escape the storm, were left with no choice but to reflect on the destruction they had brought upon themselves. Among them were the soldiers and hunters who had once sought to capture her, the researchers who had tried to exploit her magic, and even the nobles who had funded the expedition to enslave her kind. They now stood on the shores, their eyes wide with terror, watching as the sea receded, leaving behind only the wreckage of their greed. Some of the survivors swore never to repeat their mistakes. They could not undo what had been done, but they could change their ways. Some sought redemption, turning their efforts toward healing the ocean and restoring the damage that had been done. Others, however, chose to disappear into the shadows, vowing never to speak of the sea again, their lives forever haunted by the wrath they had unleashed. But Seraphina knew that for every human who chose to make amends, there were many who would continue to exploit the oceans, to seek out her kind for profit. She could feel it in the currents. Their greed was unquenchable, their hunger for power insatiable. The human world would never truly understand the ocean's power, nor would it ever respect it as it deserved. As for Seraphina's allies, their paths too had diverged. Kalin, the rogue merman warrior, had fought with all the rage he carried in his heart. But the battle had taken its toll on him, and though he was loyal to Seraphina, he had begun to question the path she had chosen. His heart, too, had been scarred by the betrayal he had suffered, and he no longer believed in the idea of vengeance as the only way forward. "I've fought too long, Seraphina," he had said, his voice heavy with weariness. "I've seen too much blood spilled. I can no longer be part of this war." His gaze lingered on her for a moment before he turned away, disappearing into the depths of the ocean, his silhouette fading in the distance. He had made his choice, to leave the vengeance behind and seek peace, even if it meant walking away from the fight. Vespera, the sea witch, remained with Seraphina, her motives as unclear as ever. The witch had helped her master the forbidden magic, but Vespera's heart was colder than the darkest depths of the ocean. She had no interest in the consequences of Seraphina's actions, as long as her power grew. "You've become a true queen of the sea," Vespera had said, her voice both admiring and detached. "And with that power comes the weight of eternity. But be careful, my dear. Power consumes those who are not careful." The Kraken, too, had stayed by Seraphina's side, though it seemed as if it was more out of allegiance to the ocean itself than to Seraphina personally. The creature had once been a mindless terror, a force of nature that acted without purpose. But now, under Seraphina's command, it had become a tool of vengeance and power. Seraphina knew that the Kraken's loyalty was tenuous, and that its presence in her life was a reminder of how far she had gone. But it was a necessary evil in a world that no longer held mercy for the likes of her. As the months passed, Seraphina stood at the edge of the ocean, gazing out at the horizon. The ocean had calmed, and the damage done by the humans was slowly beginning to heal. Coral reefs began to regrow, the creatures of the sea returned to their territories, and the balance of life beneath the waves was restored. But Seraphina could not ignore the scars she had left behind. The kingdom, the people she had once known, were gone. She had avenged them, but in doing so, she had unleashed a new, unshakable truth. Revenge, no matter how righteous, would always come at a cost. The ocean was hers once more, but was it truly hers to rule? The sea had been her home, her sanctuary, her identity, but now she questioned whether it could ever truly be her sanctuary again. She had become something more than she had ever imagined, a force of nature, a queen of vengeance, a creature both feared and revered. But was she still the Seraphina who had once lived in peace, the gentle guardian of the deep? Or had she become something darker, something that could never be undone? Did she become the monster they had feared? Or was she justice itself, an avenger for the ocean's sanctity, a protector of those who had no voice against the greed of mankind? Her thoughts swirled as the tide carried her along. The storm within her had passed, but the echoes of its fury remained. The path she had chosen had been a difficult one that had shattered her innocence and in many ways her soul. Yet, as she swam through the calm waters, she realized that no matter what she had become, she had acted out of love for the ocean, for her people, and for the sanctity of the world beneath the waves. Seraphina knew that her journey was far from over. There would always be those who sought to harm the ocean, to plunder its depths for their own gain. But now, she was more than capable of defending it, not as the gentle guardian she once was, but as a force of nature, a queen of the deep, and she would stand against anyone who dared to harm her world. As the sun began to set, casting its golden light across the sea, Seraphina allowed herself a moment of peace. The ocean was hers, and it was the only home she would ever need. Seraphina had come full circle. The once peaceful mermaid, who had roamed the oceans with curiosity and grace, was now the queen of the deep, a protector feared and respected by those who dared to trespass on her realm. The ocean had accepted her, as it had always done, but she had become something different, a force of nature, a guardian forged in the fires of vengeance and tempered by wisdom. The sea was hers now, not out of conquest, but as a duty she had chosen to bear, a responsibility she had not taken lightly. The remaining humans, those who had survived the storm and the battle, spoke of her with reverence and fear. They had learned to respect the sea, for they knew the cost of underestimating its wrath. Whispers of her legend spread far and wide, carried on the winds and across the waves. They spoke of the mermaid who had risen from the depths to avenge the destruction of her world, of the ocean queen who wielded storms and commanded creatures of myth and legend. The humans did not dare to return to the sea with greed in their hearts, for they knew that Seraphina would be watching, waiting for any sign of disrespect. But Seraphina did not live for their fear. The ocean was her true concern, her true calling. She had avenged it, yes, but now her purpose was more than revenge. It was protection, preservation, and balance. The ocean was a vast and ever-changing world, one that had existed long before humanity had ever set foot on its shores, and it would continue long after. She had come to realize that no matter how much she had fought to defend it, the ocean itself would always carry on, as it always had. And so Seraphina stood at the precipice of a decision, one that would shape her future and the future of the sea. She could continue as she was, a fierce and unrelenting protector, always ready to strike at those who threatened her realm. She could be the force of vengeance, the one who punished the greedy and cruel, ensuring that they would never again harm the ocean. But in her heart she knew that such a path would never bring her peace. Vengeance, though sweet in its moment, would only consume her again, as it had once before. Or she could disappear, retreating into the depths of the ocean, leaving behind the world of humans and their insatiable hunger for power. She could become a myth, a legend, a tale told in hushed whispers by sailors who feared to sail too far from shore. She could live in isolation, free from the conflicts that had plagued her life, but she would also be alone, removed from the very world she had once loved. Yet, as she swam through the tranquil waters, Seraphina realized that neither of these extremes was the answer. The path to peace lay not in vengeance or isolation, but in balance. She would continue to protect the ocean, but she would no longer let her anger define her. She would guard its sanctity, but she would also allow it to heal, to grow, and to find its own rhythm once more. The sea was a force of nature, and she was merely one of its many children. To protect it, she would have to live in harmony with it, just as she had once done. Seraphina had learned that justice was not about destruction, nor was it about submission. It was about finding a path that honored the past, protected the present, and embraced the future. Her gaze drifted toward the horizon, where the sky met the sea, and she whispered the final words of her journey. They feared me, they hurt me, now they remember me. In that moment, Seraphina understood that her legacy would not be defined by the battles she had fought, nor the vengeance she had exacted. It would be defined by her ability to choose her own fate, to find peace within herself, and to protect the ocean she had sworn to guard. The legend of Seraphina, the mermaid who had risen from the depths to avenge her people and protect the sea, would endure. But in her heart, she knew that her greatest victory was not in the fear she inspired, but in the wisdom she had gained. The ocean was her home, and she would rule it, not with vengeance, but with justice, balance, and a new beginning. And so, Seraphina's journey continued, not as a monster or as a queen, but as the protector of the sea, her legacy now one of peace, strength, and the eternal rhythm of the ocean. What do you think, viewers? Did Seraphina go too far in her quest for revenge, or was she justified in her actions? Was her destruction of the humans' world the only way to protect her ocean, or could there have been another path to justice? And most importantly, if you were in her place, what would you do? Drop a comment below and let's discuss. Share your thoughts. Do you see Seraphina as a tragic hero, or is she a force of destruction that became what she sought to destroy? We want to hear your perspective on her journey and the choices she made. And if you love mythical revenge tales filled with powerful creatures and intense showdowns, be sure to check out and click here, where we dive into even more legendary stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to join us for more epic tales from the depths of mythology and beyond. Your thoughts are what make this community so special, and we can't wait to hear what you think. See you in the next one.